It is 7:03. Welcome to the special town meeting. I call the meeting to order. My name is Jay Tallerman. I am your moderator. I declare that the warrant has been duly posted and published and that the reading of the warrant is waived. Thank you all for your patience and your understanding with the circumstances that bring us to an unusual forum. Thank you for being here. Thank you for the staff. Thank you to King Philip for making this possible in a safe way. I'll just get closer to it then. And everyone's pretty close. All right, I'll stay pretty close to it. Thank you most of all for doing the important business for the town of Norfolk. Is there a flag somewhere? Is there not a flag somewhere? Okay, well, can we fake that there's a flag here and do the Pledge of Allegiance, please, if everyone stands briefly? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. A couple of quick introductions. Todd Lindmark, all the way down here, our finance director. Carol Green, our town clerk. Kevin Calcutt, the chair of the select board. Select board members Anita Mecklenburg and Cece Van Tyne. We've got the advisory board over here in front as well. Blythe Robinson, our town administrator, and Peter Mello, our town council. So we have a number of other people here that can answer questions if need be. A couple of the ground rules. The meeting's governed by town meeting time and by local bylaws. I'll explain procedures as needed. Most of you already know how I run the meeting, and I will recognize requests for clarifications or or points of order. Motions will generally be made by the advisory board here in front, except for Article 8, where the motion will be made by the person who petitioned for the inclusion of that matter on the warrant. Those who make the motions will have the first opportunity to explain the rationale behind the motion. And motions and motions to amend generally must be in writing, except for ministerial things where we can make a friendly amendment. If you don't have a motion to amend in writing, Carol and I can help you put one of those together. I'll try and balance any discussion as well as I can. Please respect social distance. If you are queuing up to the mics, we have mics pretty much all over the place. We have some in front. I think we have some on the sides as well. Please don't touch a mic. Please don't take your mask off when speaking at the mic. We'll be sanitizing the mic or putting on different coverings in between speakers. Everyone's going to have a chance to speak on a matter, but especially given the circumstances, I would really appreciate brevity and limited amount of time at the mic. You do have a maximum of 5 minutes, but don't be surprised if I move you along. All comments and questions are through the moderator. Every time you come up to the mic, or at least the first time, give your name and address, and you will be recognized. Let's have some spirited debate. That's a meeting that supports and opposes the matters that are before us, but no personal comments. All comments should be civil and respectful. I want to hear facts and your opinions. What I don't want to hear is what you think someone else's opinion is. We have a lot of local officials between myself, town council, and them. We can get all your questions answered. In lieu of a voice vote, which I normally do today, just because of the mask, when we do call for a vote on a question, let's do it with a show of hands. Yays followed by nays. If need be, I can do a standing count. I don't think that's going to be necessary. It's a limited number of people here tonight. I do respect a call of the question, which is a motion to cut off debate and proceed directly to the vote. However, if people are still interested in speaking, I may defer action on that if necessary. If I'm hearing a lot of the same comment over and over again, I may call the question myself as well. There are also a few handouts available at the front, including other copies of the warrant. There is a handout as well for Article 6, and there is an informational handout with respect to the workings of the B1 committee that is continuing to work on zoning for town center, and I expect we'll hear more about that in the springtime. So with that, we are at Article number 1. Ms. Klein.
I couldn't understand when you were talking. Can everybody understand me?
Yep.
No?
We could hear you. They said no?
I'll give it a shot. I'm really loud. So, Article 1 is to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate or transfer any available funds or a sum of money to be added to departmental budgets and appropriations for the fiscal year ending on...
Just the motion?
Oh, I did that. Okay. I moved... Sorry. I move that the town transfer the sum of $239,871 as printed in the handout.
Seconded.
Sorry about that.
Okay. It has been moved and seconded. Explanation?
Yeah. Added to departmental budgets and appropriations for the fiscal year ending on June 30th, 2021, and to take any other action relative to. Okay. This article moves to restore money that was cut from the 2021 budget. This is not new money being added in. It is monies that were cut preemptively due to, out of abundance of caution, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, knowing that the full amount of the state money might not be allocated. The money from the state was higher than we anticipated, so the money should be restored at the percentage that it was cut.
So, by way of the motion, the handout that is referenced is the, I believe, the PowerPoint presentation, which was available to anyone as they came in the door. Does anyone have a question or comment on Article 1? Seeing none, it requires a simple majority vote. All those in favor, raise your hand. All those opposed? It passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Article 2, unpaid bills. Ms. Klein.
Article 2, I move to indefinitely postpone.
Seconded. Moved and seconded. Ms. Klein.
Sorry, excuse me. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate or transfer any available source of funds, sum of money to any unpaid bills for the prior year pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 44. The advisory board recommends indefinite postponement because there are no unpaid bills at this time.
Any questions, comments on Article 2? Seeks just indefinite postponement is, by the way, a motion to defeat or pass over the article. Seeing no questions or comments, all those in favor of indefinite postponement, raise your hand. All those opposed? It passes unanimously. Article 3, capital expenses. Mr. Lutz.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town borrow the sum of $359,000 to fund the capital expenditures as printed in the warrant and provided in the handout.
Seconded.
Article 3 would authorize the town to borrow, as I said, $359,000 to fund 3 items for the Department of Public Works, 2 vehicles and some road improvements. It would add to the chapter 90 money that the department uses to pave roads during the paving season. The advisory committee believes that these items will help to enhance the operations of the DPW and provide additional street paving which will occur during fiscal year 2021. The borrowing will be completed within the town's levy limits.
Any questions, comments? Sir?
Hi, Jeff Berkner, Wampanoag Avenue. I just want to
Could
understand.
you just speak up? I know we're
Oh,
all
sorry.
having a hard time hearing a little bit.
Sure. Jeff Berkner, Wampanoag Avenue. I just want to understand that the borrowing for roads, I want to make sure that the road will last at least as long as paying back the loan for that.
I'm not sure I could hear that question particularly clearly.
In other words, I want to make sure that we're not borrowing money to repair a road, that the road will then deteriorate, but we're still paying off the borrowing.
The borrowing that we do for roads has got a 10-year term, and the lifespan of the roads should be long beyond that.
Thank you.
Any
Hi, Thomas Klein, 253 Main Street. I lived in Norfolk for almost 25 years, and I've seen people speeding down Main Street all the time because of cars and buses and people walking their dogs. Can they just make the roads safer? That's all. That's my first question. The second question is, are they going to pave Fleetwood and Ferndale? Again, we haven't seen those roads paved since late 80s, early 90s. And Main Street from the bridge up to the commuter rail, that's a bumpy road. Buses of the kids, the students riding up and down, it's not comfortable at all. And what are we going to do with Village Green, Stanhope? Those are the really lousy ones.
Can anyone help explain what roads this might be spent on, or is it in the handout?
There is a list in the handout of the proposed road projects, which
Yep.
I think involve both the Chapter 90 money and the $100,000 that we're voting on tonight. But I would defer to someone from the DPW on that.
So that Thomas is right behind where Article 3 is. There's a list of the roads. So I don't know what else would be on tap. Obviously, in the springtime, we'll be discussing road money again. So maybe the other roads will work up on, and I'm sure you'll be speaking with town officials on your thoughts on what roads we should be tackling.
Okay, yeah, because Fleetwood's is in Ferndale a mess, and also the Cape Road's a mess too, and Old Mill, Standish and Bale Place. So we have a lot of roads to go for next year before the virus is over, I hope.
Thank you very much, as
you.
always, for your insight to these matters. Any further questions, comments on Article 3? Article 3, was there another one?
She's a student.
Yeah. Article 3 is a borrowing article. It requires a 2/3 vote. All those in favor, raise your hand. All those opposed? I believe it passes unanimously. So that passes by the 2/3 required. Article 4, Mr. Lutz, another capital article.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town transfer from free cash the sum of $401,230 to fund the capital expenditures as printed in the handout.
Seconded.
Mr. Lutz.
Article 4 would authorize the town to purchase a number of capital items utilizing free cash. The list of the items appears in the handout. The advisory committee believes that these purchases are necessary and within the town's ability to afford, and move to approve this article.
Question, comment at the mic. Sir.
Yeah, just question about what car one replacement is going to be replaced for the fire, because we have an 07 Expedition and a 2015 Expedition.
So those don't appear to be on this list. So I don't know if anyone else wants to speak about our schedule for vehicle replacement. It appears that there's some police cruisers, and then those are the only vehicles that are on. There's a car number 1 replacement for the fire department. So if anyone else has info on that, Blythe, our town administrator.
Mr. Moderator, so there are 3 vehicles that are planned on this list. 2 of them are police cruisers to replace some that are aging in our fleet. When 2 police cruisers are bought, 2 older cars will be then downcycled to the facilities department or other departments and replace older cars there, and those will be then sold off at auction. There's also a vehicle for the fire department, the chief's car number 1. That car is actually in fairly good condition, but car number 2 is not. So we'll replace car number 1. The current car number 1 will become car number 2, and number 2 will be sold at auction.
Thank
Does that
you.
help answer your questions?
Yes.
Mr. Rosenberg.
David Rosenberg, 123 North Street. I'm interested in understanding what voting equipment will be replaced.
On the voting?
So this year was the year for federal census, and with federal census comes re-precincting. We have in two of our 3 precincts right now. We're at the limit for number of residents, so we expect quite the increase from the federal census. So we're going to have to go to 4 precincts, which means that I need another whole set of voting equipment for the 4th precinct. So it'd be the machine, the bin, everything that goes with it. Okay.
Our town clerk, Carol Green. Further questions?
Yeah, the school at HOD, is that going to be like, is it going to be like this running out of space again forever until, like more spaces until next school year and year after until the 2050s? And also the problem is that the parking lot is not that good, so is there any place in that? And what caused the bus fees from almost 4 years to be changed, according to Dick Holmes? And that was a confusion that was meant in the last spring town meeting, which I didn't attend. So did any of the school committee commissions, Dr. Lowry, Matt Hafner, anything can answer that for me, please?
So I personally am having a hard time understanding. There's a ton of echo up here, so I'm having a hard time hearing those questions. I don't know if anyone else could.
I couldn't hear him. Do you want somebody to walk over there and talk to him?
Sure. We're going to try and get a better feel for what your questions were, Tom.
I know. I'm just saying that why did the school system change the contracts from a little different from last year than the year before? For homes contracts, for the routes, yes, for the little ones. Thank you.
He wants to know why the bus company changed the routes from the previous year for the bus contracts. Yep, for HOD.
So there was a question as to why there was a change in the bus routes. It's a little bit beyond the scope of this, and I'm not sure there's anyone from the school that's prepared to answer that here today. I think that may be more appropriate question to raise when we handle the larger school budget in the springtime. I think it's an important issue. So I want to get it raised, but here we're just talking about these few capital projects and spending money on those. But I hope you raise it again when we're considering the big school budget in the springtime. We have a question here.
7 Margot's Way. Wondering what the amount of the certified free cash was for fiscal year 2020?
$1,064,000. That's before. $1,064,000, I'm told.
What is that?
$1,064,000.
Okay. And the balance that is not spent, what becomes of that money?
Carrie, it's still free cash. Whatever we're not spending tonight remains available as free cash.
Okay, because I thought it might be prudent to add to the stabilization fund when we have money that we're not spending. And I was wondering what the thought process was as to why we're not adding to stabilization.
I mean, I could let other people answer that, but I mean, I think the likely answer is that there's so much uncertainty that getting money out of stabilization being more difficult than getting money out of free cash, to have that flexibility as the town is dealing with the economic difficulties posed by COVID, that having it remain in free cash is a little bit easier. That's a guess. I'm getting nods, so I think I was correct.
So if you're spending $400,000, then approximately $1 million is the remainder is just going to be sitting there. Not. What is that going to be used for?
We'll see what the town needs. We're not spending it tonight.
Okay, so it's not going into stabilization. It's not being spent, and it's just sitting in a general account somewhere? Is that the idea?
Hi, excuse me.
Ms. Klein.
The main difference, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Free cash and stabilization are basically the same thing. They're an ability for us to get money outside of the fiscal year for certain items, or to use that money to pay for something so does not go into our budget. It just stays in those accounts. The difference is free cash only requires 50% of the people who attend town meeting. Stabilization requires, I believe, 2/3. So it's much harder to get it out of stabilization than it is free cash. So if you think you're going to need to use it, you should keep it in free cash and not put it into stabilization. But there's really essentially not a huge difference in the types of accounts that they are. Does that help at all, or do you still have a question?
What's that?
I said, does that explanation help, or?
It does help, but I thought that if there's that much money, why not earmark, say, $500,000 of that remaining million and put that into stabilization?
Okay, so we actually dealt with this question when we were doing the budget in the spring, because for the advisory board, we were trying to come up with a way to not cut the 2021 budget. Our credit rating is dependent on how much money we have in our stabilization and free cash funds. So you can't deplete them, but it's no benefit to having an excess. So you really should try to strike a balance between what you're putting into your budget so that your budget carries through year over year, but also you have a minimum amount in your free cash and stabilization funds in case there's ever something like a pandemic or a fire truck breaks down mid-year and you can't wait till the next fiscal year to replace it, or the boiler breaks at town hall. Those are things that you can't necessarily predict. So that's why the bank requires you to have so much money in your free cash and your stabilization funds.
Okay, and just a related question, how much is in stabilization then?
Say that one more time.
What is the balance in the stabilization account?
So the balance in stabilization is about $1.7 million. Getting back to your first earlier question, so each year, after the end of the year, we have to go through this process, which is getting our free cash certified with the DLS, and that means we have to send a lot of reports into them. They review the accounts and they say, okay, based on what you provided us, we give you a balance, and that's your free cash, which is certified that you can use for typically one-time items. In the past, we've had about $1 million, $1.5 million. Past couple of years, it's been a little over $1 million. And typically in the fall is when we do the capital expenditures. We spend about $400,000 to $500,000 on items for capital nature in the fall, leaving us a balance of about $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 that again allows us the opportunity in the springtime to address either budget issues or other small capital items that might come up throughout the year, or transfers to accounts that require certain fundings. That gives us that flexibility. This being a COVID year and everything has been turned upside down, we have no idea what the budget's going to be for the next year. We're anticipating that, based on where we've been in the trend, it's not going to be bleak as we initially expected it to be, and it's actually turning out to be not too bad based on the current situation and going forward. So again, the idea here behind that free cash and where we've decided and where we're going to be going with the balance, it's no different than what we did last year. This is typically what we do each year. So we're right in line with where we anticipate and hope to be on a going forward basis as well. Hopefully that explains it.
Okay.
Thank you. And anyone else with a question here? Sir?
Hi, Paul Burns, 32 Union Street. Can you hear me okay?
I can.
Great. So my question is about the police equipment that's listed on this article. And let me first start by saying this is not really a question, calling into question, probably what is much needed equipment for our police department. But I happen to be aware of a grant program that is offered through the state, which I think in total is worth several $1 million. And I'm just wondering if we've applied to this grant program to source the funds for this equipment, and if we have, what will become of what's otherwise earmarked here for this equipment if we do source those funds through that grant program. And I guess second part of that question, if we haven't applied to source those funds through that grant program, I think the window for application is still open. Is that something that we could consider doing so that we could use these funds for something else?
Ms. Robinson, I assume that we've applied for just about every grant we can or that we normally do. So to the extent that there's available grants that are open to the town of Norfolk, I'm informed by our town administrator that we apply for them. I'm not aware of, obviously, if we had grant money coming in that would offset that would make more money available for us when we go to do our budgeting in the spring, for sure. But this money, for the time being, there is no grant money available that we know of right now. So that's why we're appropriating this from free cash.
I'm sorry, just because of the speakers and my distance, I want to make sure I understood your response. So it's that we may have applied to that grant program. First of all, I think that my esteemed officers in the room may be more aware of the details of that grant program, but I read it as sort of a general grant that could be used really in any way that would help police departments perform public safety related matters, and certainly having a new cruiser and new radios, I think would fall into that bucket. So perhaps if you can educate me more on the degree to which we've applied to that grant program and maybe a forecast on our ability to get it, that would be much appreciated.
Chief?
I'd certainly be happy to talk to you afterwards, but I think what he's talking about is the Greater Highway Safety Bureau, GHSB, and since 2010, we've applied every single year. Because the accidents in Norfolk are so low compared to the other communities, we never qualify for that grant. We put in every year, but we never qualify because our accidents are too low. So we have to do that a different way. So we have to, find a different grant that would cover what you're looking for.
Yeah, no, and I don't mean to be, well, I'll wrap it up, and I don't mean to keep everybody here, but no, so I appreciate that. But it's that actually, so after our conversation about the street, I went and looked into it. I read that grant as sort of a general grant that can be used for police departments to apply to and get police cruisers and equipment and can go towards overtime. And just seemed like a tremendous opportunity to be able to take advantage of funds that are otherwise made available in the state. I don't know if it goes beyond, what we've already applied for, if we can try and source funds like that, through that grant program, which is worth several $million.
Again, I'll look at it again with you, but the last I knew from my deputy every year applies for it, and we end up not qualifying. So, but we'll look at it and see if we can come up with a different way to view it.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Seeing no further questions or comments on Article 4 requires a majority vote. All those in favor, raise your hand. All those opposed? It passes unanimously. Article 5 is about committee reports. We have no formal reports, but the gentleman at the mic here has asked to make a quick comment for the body.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I just wanted to say thank you to Carol Green, our town clerk, and her staff.
You could just speak up so we can all hear you. I know it's hard.
Sure. I just wanted to say thank you to Carol Green, our town clerk, and her staff, Anthony and Kim, and all the workers at the polls and who worked on the early ballots for running an efficient and honest election with integrity. I know it was a very intense year with these last two elections with the COVID problem. The elections really are the cornerstone of our democracy. And again, Carol, thank you very much.
Let's all give Carol a round of applause here. Carol hates this moment. Yeah. So, but thank you very much for that. Article 6, Mr. Hurwitz. It's the land purchase.
Okay, Mr. Moderator, I move that the town appropriate from the Community Preservation Fund, Open Space, and Recreation Reserve $100,000 for the purchase of 43 acres of land from the appropriate agency of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and the payment of any costs and fees incidental thereto, and to authorize the Select Board and other public bodies referenced in Article 6 to take all actions described in Article 6 as printed in the warrant, including, without limitation, all actions necessary to acquire such land and convey restrictions with respect thereto.
Seconded. It's been moved and seconded. Mr. Hurwitz.
All right, the Advisory Committee recommends approval of this article. Approving this article will authorize the town to spend up to $100,000 from the CPC Community Preservation Fund to acquire 43 acres of land from the state adjacent to the Pond Street Recreation Facility. This amount is inclusive of both the land purchase, $17,200, in addition to any necessary related expenditures, including surveying and legal costs. At the fall 2018 town meeting, $4,000 was previously allocated to purchase 5 acres of this land. These 5 acres are included in the larger 43-acre lot, and the necessary funds will be offset by this amount already approved. It's expected that the land will be utilized for expanded active recreation activities such as soccer and baseball, as well as passive recreation activities such as hiking or biking trails.
Thank you, Mr. Hurwitz. We have a question here on the far aisle.
No, not yet.
Article, he said.
Not now. Does anybody else have a comment?
I don't think so. I think it's you.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you, moderator. I'm David Turry, 47 North Street. I'm chairman of the Conservation Commission, and we did provide a handout. And we are endorsing this motion because a couple of things. One, what the Conservation Commission mission is to protect our wetlands, but also to manage our conservation areas. The 43 acres goes along with the open space plan that was made out in 2017, and it fulfills that part of that study. Now, you can see the map that I provided, and The yellow part is very low wetlands, which probably is swamp. We won't know everything until it is surveyed, but as we see it, there's, of the 43 acres, 23 acres can probably be used for active use, again, depending on after the survey, and then 20 acres will be passive use, which is wetlands with buffer, and they could include trails, access to bodies of water. The Charles River runs close to it, and also for wildlife refuge. And based on all of this, we feel as the Conservation Commission that we'll do our due diligence after the purchase, the surveying, et cetera, that we would hold some public forums to get some feedback on the passive trails or areas, and which would be non-motorized use, and then we'll start to develop those. And we've been active this year in developing trails and being proactive in our conservation land. So I endorse this motion.
Did everyone hear
Thank
that?
you. And for those of you that were following along, there was a separate handout in the gold printing that was available out front. There's some of that information that Mr. Turi just explained. Question, comment back here?
Yes, I certainly don't understand the intricacies of land acquisition and land use, but could the town save money by not buying the wetlands portion of it?
I'm sorry, the question was what?
Could the town save money by not buying the wetlands portion of this land?
I do not know if the town could have bifurcated that. My guess is the wetland had little value, but I don't know if anyone can speak to that specific question. Sir.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. My name is Will Rigdon, and Mr. Moderator, through you to the town meeting. My name is Will Rigdon, 35 Lafayette Lane. I'm the chair of the Rec Commission here in town, and I first just want to say thank you to everyone that has gotten us to this point with this piece of land. This is actually a parcel of property that came about almost a decade ago at this point, and it's been looked at a couple times, and we're finally able to bring it here to town meeting today. So thank you to all those people, including our awesome state representative Dooley, who helped us get this through the legislature and to the governor's desk, and now here to the town meeting floor. Before I answer that question, I just wanted to offer, as Mr. Turi did from the Conservation Commission, that the Recreation Commission is beyond excited to support this purchase. We feel that it's going to be an awesome thing for the town, and a great collaboration between us and the Conservation Commission to expand the offerings, fields, trails, nature conservancy, all these sorts of fun things that we can look to do with this parcel of land. As for the question that was asked regarding could we save, the question was could we save money if we didn't purchase the wetlands? So part of the thing that makes this proposition so awesome is that the purchase price of the land is $400 per acre. So it's kind of ridiculously low. So we could save some money. If we estimate 20 acres of wetlands, like off the top of my head, 400 times 20, we could save that amount. A lot of what the article itself is asking for is an allowance for surveying and other things that are going to have to happen regardless of whether the parcel is 43 acres or 20 acres. As was mentioned when we started talking about this, we already have approval on 5 acres of it. The reason we actually haven't fully gone through with that purchase is because the same survey and the same sorts of steps, filings with the state are going to have to happen regardless of that. So we wanted to wait till now so we only have to do everything once. So we could save a couple $1,000s, but just a couple $1,000s.
I'll point out as well, in the Conservation Commission handout, they did highlight certain attributes and benefits of preserving the wetlands and owning the wetlands as well as the active upland as well. So that may be of some help. Any other questions on this item? Sir.
Hi, testing. Oh, sorry about that. Paul Burns again, 32 Union. Just a quick comment. I mean, I don't know if we're under time pressure here, But the way I read this additional pamphlet here is that a feasibility study needs to be done, to determine what exactly can be done with these additional 43 acres. And I guess if we can't do anything, it can remain as hiking trails. But these other items that are listed here, I don't know if they're listed here to sort of help sell this concept, but it could, in my opinion, if the feasibility study comes back that we can't really do anything. And I mean, I don't know what it comes to when it comes to preserving wetlands. I imagine there's certain environmental agencies that would preserve those kind of as a matter of course. But to spend $100,000 on this without truly knowing what we can do with this land seems to me a little fiscally irresponsible, especially in the year that we're going through right now.
Mr. Rigdon?
So the first thing I want to emphasize on that question, it's a good question, is we're allocating this from CPC funding. So I think most, if not all people understand CPC, but if not real quickly, it's a fund that comes out of property taxes every year, a very small amount, and it can only be used for a few things: furthering open space, recreation, affordable housing, and historical restorations in town. So this isn't coming from the free cash we spoke about earlier. This isn't coming from anything else. The purpose specifically of this fund is to identify open space and recreational opportunities as well as conservation opportunities and to apply the funding to that. So as a Recreation Commission and I think as a Conservation Commission, we feel that we've addressed this parcel, we've evaluated this parcel, and us as well as the CPC committee felt as though that this parcel achieve those goals and furthers those goals that the committee set out to do. In terms of the feasibility study, you really only have to conduct a feasibility study before you're going to develop the land. So with the cheap price of the land, it's the Recreation Commission's position that even if the land were to just sit there and be conserved, it's better off in our hands than the state's hands. There's no telling what the state could put on that land, what they could do with that land. I don't know. I don't want to say anything. I haven't heard anything. But for such a cheap price, the conservation value of having the land there alone makes it worth it in our opinion. And I think a lot of things, even if we couldn't put a field on there, I think a lot of what Mr. Turi spoke about in terms of trails and nature conservancy could still happen regardless of the result of that feasibility study.
Thank you, Mr. Rigdon. Any additional questions? Mr. Rosenberg.
Can somebody tell me how much we have available in conservation funds right now?
In the Community Preservation Fund, someone can answer that back here.
Very unique circumstance here. You can hear me okay? Cindy Andrade, I'm the chair of the Community Preservation Committee. I'm at 17 Worcester Road. Our available funds as of June, which is our latest date, our available funds for open space.
You just speak a little bit more directly to the mic,
okay.
Cindy.
Our available funds for open space are $189,682, and we also have an undesignated, sorry, that was the wrong number. Open space, $70,949. We have an undesignated fund of $2.5 million. Any future feasibility studies would probably be asked to be funded through community preservation. So I'll put that out there as well. So that those are our current two balances that are relevant to this article.
Thank you, Ms. Andrade. Seeing no, Mr. Rigdon?
There's just one more thing I would like to add. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I do want to also point out that the article is up to $100,000. There's quite a bit of buffer in there from what we think we're actually going to need. As I mentioned, the purchase price of the land is very cheap, $400 an acre. There's enough allowance in there for surveying and stuff like that, but I mean, Cindy could correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think we're going to come near that number. So I think the rest of that would end up just going back into the CPC fund, not to be used or used on another project.
Thank you. Question, comment back here.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Jennifer Wynn, Hemlock Lane. Very quick comment. I would like the town to consider purchasing this. I understand completely in this time being very careful and prudent with what we spend our money on, but being someone who uses Pond Street Rec a lot, and that's what this is adjacent Two, I can tell you that it would behoove, in my opinion, the community to purchase this land. Again, we may not be certain for sure we could put some sort of athletic field or something on it, but from what I'm hearing, we could definitely use it for nature trails and whatnot. And I can tell you with the growing population, our school population, we are going to need more open space for recreation. So at this price, I'm imploring the town to vote for it. That's it.
Thank you. Seeing nobody else at the microphones, this requires a majority vote. All those in favor of the purchase, raise your hand. All those opposed? It passes not unanimously, but by the requisite majority. Article 7 is a road acceptance. Mr. Huff.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town accept Silver Fox Road as a public way, and further to authorize the select board to accept any fee, interest, easement, or appurtenances in or upon such way, including, without limitation, any and all easements for utilities and drainage, and execute any documents in connection therewith.
Seconded. Been moved and seconded. Mr. Huff.
The advisory committee recommends accepting Silver Fox Road as a public way in the town.
Thank you. Questions, comments on the acceptance of this road as a public way in town? Seeing nobody at the mic, this requires a simple majority. All those in favor, raise your hand. All those opposed? It passes unanimously. Article 8, the petitioner article.
Mr. Moderator, I move to amend Article 8, Section 2 of the General Bylaws, entitled Disturbing Noises from Animals, to replace such section in its entirety with the text that Article 8 proposes to add as printed in the warrant.
Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded. Erica, you have any explanation on this one?
I do. I think it's important that everyone understand what the current bylaw states, which is, no person shall keep any bird, fowl, or other animal which by barks, howls, other noises disturbs the peace and quietness of any resident of the town. March 16, 1936. The current bylaw is extremely vague. This law gives anyone within the town the right to complain about any animal that to them is disturbing their peace and quietness. I'm looking to amend that law to, no person shall keep any bird, fowl, or other animal which by barks, howls, or other noise disturbs the peace and quietness between the hours of 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. of any resident who lives or works within 750 feet of the animal. Such noise must be deemed excessive and continuous for 15 minutes. Our current law becomes a judgment call for the animal control officer to make. One person's opinion becomes the factor as to whether a complaint gets followed up on or not. The article I'm proposing will give the ACO the ability to weed out frivolous complaints by asking 3 questions. What time of day was it? Where do you live or work in regard to the animal? How long did the noise go on for? I think the amendment additions are reasonable.
I do want to make a friendly amendment that it's not Article 8, it's Article 13 of the bylaws, so I'll make that friendly amendment for you. Does anyone else have a comment on this motion? Tom?
Yeah, Thomas McLean again from 253 Main Street, Norfolk, across Norfolk. For almost 25 years, it's been noisy by the tracks. We have coyotes at our neighbor's house, behind our neighbor's house in Sweetland Farms. We have dogs, mostly a lot on Canterbury, which is nonstop. I hear coyotes mostly often all the time, even the morning, at night, crows, blue jays, starlings, and all types of birds. Every noise of living farm animals. Is there anything we could do to keep the noise down so people can sleep, especially by the train of Sweetland? Because when it happens in the summer, I have my air conditioner on, and I hear the noise all the time, and it keeps happening. So is there any way we can get rid of that noise, the hunters and the control works, the animal control, anything like that?
So I think that is an interesting question that we could address at another time in terms of other noise. This bylaw has slightly different proposals as it's in terms of talking about more domestic birds, fowl, and other animals that bark, howl, or make other noises. But I appreciate the question. I do want to ask the advisory board if they have a recommendation with respect to this motion. Mr. Hurwitz?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. The advisory committee recommends indefinite postponement of this article. Our opinion is that the citizens' petition regarding animal nuisance guidelines is overly restrictive as written and would greatly limit the ability for town residents to file legitimate nuisance complaints. The advisory committee believes that the current bylaw allows for the town's animal control officer to use professional judgment in responding to nuisance complaints in an appropriate fashion.
Thank you, Mr. Hurwitz. Ms. Costa, did you have a question or a comment, or are you just making yourself available? Thank you. Any further comments, questions? With someone coming to the mic now?
Hi, my name is Eileen Siegel, 245 Warren Drive. This proposed article makes the current animal regulations...
If you could speak into the mic.
Oh, sorry. Okay, how is that? All right. This proposed article makes the current animal regulations, Article 8, in the town bylaws less restrictive by stating that animals making a noise and disturbing the peace from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. for at least 15 minutes allows an animal to make noise for any length of time from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. This impacts those people who are working from home, attending school online, working the night shift. Under this article, it would be possible for the animal to make noise for 10 minutes all night long. If this passes and other residents are concerned about animals disturbing the peace, my concern would be an article that may be proposed in the future to eliminate the ability to own livestock in certain parts of Norfolk, similar to surrounding communities such as Midfield and Walpole, where there are things like no rooster laws, and institute a requirement for permits like in other surrounding communities such as Foxborough, Walpole, Midfield, Bellingham, Franklin, Millis, and Medway. So again, this article that she's proposing decreases the restrictions because now you can have animals that make noise all day long. So I think you should take that under advisement. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions, comments? Mr. Rosenberg.
This article offers some guidance to the animal control officer about what would be reasonable and what would be unreasonable. And while I don't have any concerns about the current animal control officer, I think that it is desirable not to have this be too subjective and rather to put in an article which offers specific guidance so that the animal control officer can be aware of the intentions of the town. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rosenberg. Ma'am?
Hi, my name is Josephine Kardahi. I live at 53 Seekonk Street. I got to hear both sides, and I agree with the last speaker. I moved here from Quincy because I promised my 3 children that when we moved to our house here, that we're going to be able to get a dog. That dog turned into 4 chickens and I live on over an acre of land, and it's not bothering my abutters. This law, the way it's written, we're no longer that town of 1936. And, we're not that close to our neighbor. Things have to be within reason. The way it's currently written allows for overreach, and there's a possibility that things could be misinterpreted or complain all the time, and it has no structure whatsoever or any clarification. It's not fair to people that come here and have, a couple of dogs or a couple of chickens and have over an acre of land. I mean, we're not a town that has, people with pit bulls and chained outside. We are people that, we care about our animals. They're like our children. We care for our children. We care for our neighbors. We care for our butters. This forces people to work together. The way it's written, it could be a neighbor that just moved into town and just calls the police at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, decides they want to complain. It could be a neighbor that has malice against another neighbor. It allows for a lot of misinterpretation. And frankly, this is not the history that Norfolk is built on. I used to come here and go horseback riding as a child. I grew up in Norwood. People come here because of its agricultural history. We have all these people, have all these, projects coming into town, and I'm all for change. But we can't change our history. We can't give up everything in this town. There's certain things have to stay the way they are. We've got a, gun range, leaf blowers we're listening to all day long. We got 40B projects going on. And this allows for structure, people to be happy in their homes, have a little bit of, life with their animals. Just allows for too much overreach. Though the change is going on, I just don't want to see this changed. I just want to see more clarification, give us, more equal footing with our animals at home.
Thank you.
Sir? Hi. Bonnie Manley, Tucker Road. I'm going to speak in opposition of this particular article. And while I appreciate the proponent's attempt to further clarify the existing rules on the books, I'm really concerned that this continues the vagueness and actually has unintended consequences some of the other speakers have touched on. For instance, how is the noise deemed excessive? There's no decibel limit provided. Do we want to go down that road of specifying a particular decibel level? What happens outside the 750 feet? I'm on Tucker. I can hear the train. It's more than 750 feet. Noises happen. They carry in the wind. What about daytime noise? For instance, I had a colt last year who got separated from his mother and was distraught. I was very appreciative of Hillary's call that one of my neighbors had noticed my animal in distress. He didn't see his mom go back into the barn. He was unhappy. I am happy that my neighbors took that opportunity to reach out, and Hillary did as well. Additionally, what happens if it's not continuous for 15 minutes? What is continuous? What if it's continuous for 14 minutes? What if it's only 14 minutes every hour from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m.? This is a slippery slope. I don't think we want to go down it. It's the start of other excessive noise issues. I have a neighbor who loves their leaf blower and their leaf vacuum. And I promise you, he's doing more than 15 minutes continuous. Is an article now in order where we are going to be looking at decibel levels on lawnmower equipment. This isn't the town that I want to live in. I want to live in a town where I can have a conversation with the animal control officer and work with my neighbors so that we can preserve some of what is very wonderful and unique about this amazing town that I've been living in for more than 12 years. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't believe there's anyone else at a mic. Do you have a question, comment? Head over to a mic.
Good evening. Thank you for letting me speak in. My name is Joseph Janis. I'm new to the town. I moved in about a month ago at 131 North Street. I'm from Franklin originally. My family moved out of Franklin because of those laws of restrictions, especially on animals. I believe we should listen to animals more. And I moved to Maine, and I had to move back down here for work. I'm an electrician, self-employed. And I moved to Norfolk because of the agricultural beliefs that we have. My family went to Norfolk Aggie. A lot of my brothers went there. So that's just my feelings. And I'm deeply feel strong that animals should not be restricted. Thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse me. Can we hear from Hillary Cohen, please?
I'm sorry?
Can we hear from Hillary Cohen, please?
I'm not going to force her to speak. She's available for questions.
Okay. I would like to hear ACO Cohen's opinion on this article, please.
Well,
and for anyone
ACO
else who would like to
Cohen,
speak, you
if
have
you're
to
comfortable,
get really close to the microphone and pull your mask down, or else we can't understand anything that you're saying.
Might have to speak up a little bit, Hillary.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So as the animal control officer, whatever the town votes on, obviously, I'll enforce it the way that I have enforced everything for the past 26 years and do a fair and impartial investigation of every situation. Not every person in Norfolk works a 9-to-5 job. We have people on graveyard shifts and swing shifts. They want their peace and quiet when they go home for their family or to sleep. We have incidences pursuant to complaints already that have been addressed through our law, which has been utilized before and has held up through the court process. Most instances are resolved through education prior to enforcement. The way that this law change is drafted does contradict state law for barking dogs, which is spelled out in Chapter 140. Allowing a free-for-all period for all animal noises may end up promoting negative neighborly relations. We are becoming more densely populated as a community, building growth. Our farmland is diminishing along with other natural noise buffering properties, forests, etc. Noise will invariably travel further than 750 feet in different landscapes. I believe this law reduces people's ability to complain when they have a legitimate complaint. Any resident should be able to file a complaint, not just those within a certain footage. The way that the bylaw change is drafted, there may be constitutional amendment issues. I have spoken with Rentham District Court on this with Magistrate Kelly. I lost my place, hold on one sec. It does not state who measures a 750-foot designation or provide a path as to how this may be legally ascertained. This possibly could end up as a Fourth Amendment violation issue. If we are not granted the ability to go and measure the property due to curtilage being in play, my department would spend numerous hours filing for a search warrant to go and fulfill my investigation. Warrants are a lengthy process to procure and can take several hours or days to accomplish. Similar to other animal sounds, dogs barking can be heard for up to more than a mile in certain conditions. Due to terrain, elevation of a house, environmental density, etc. As your animal control officer, I have been dispatched to barking and noise complaints where the noise was a secondary concern as the animal was actually in peril and in need of services. Either stuck, impaled, as I'm sorry I don't remember your name, but we did have that horse call. If the town removes the right to investigate these complaints during that time frame, we could inadvertently be placing animals in peril that need assistance. Who's going to enforce the the law after those hours as well, because noise complaints are fielded by the police department, and then they would call me if there invariably was an emergency situation at that point. If the law is passed, it won't solve the issues at the core. The Board of Health has powers to investigate noise disturbances on their own. I am an agent of the Board of Health, so if a complaint goes through the Board of Health, I'm still going to end up being involved. State law has more laws regulating noise under 272 Section 53, which is called Keeper of a Disorderly House. The fine in that law for the first offense is $150. That's more than triple what the Norfolk bylaw is. Second offense is $200, and there is a threat of incarceration in that law. I don't think we really want to go there. The Board of Health also has laws where they may review of an order and adjudging and the operation of a farm to be a nuisance as well. I did a comparison of Foxborough, Millis, Medway, Walpole, and Medfield. Medfield and Walpole has stated to me that roosters are not allowed in their town, period. Bellingham, Franklin, Millis, Medway, no roosters unless defined as a farm with 5+ consecutive acres, non-residential. Foxborough roosters, there was a little conflict in their law. It was 2+ acres or 5+ acres. Again, there is a conflict. All of our surrounding towns are regulating the animals that we can have in our jurisdiction. Norfolk has not done that yet. We're allowing you to have your animals, but be respectful of your neighbors. In the towns of Millis, Medway, you have to have certain acreage to have certain numbers of livestock. And the following towns require you to be permitted for livestock: Foxborough, Walpole, Medfield, Bellingham, Franklin, Millis, and Medway. Currently, Norfolk does not require a permit. So those are the considerations to think of if we do change this law. Taking my ACO hat off and speaking as a resident, Hillary Cohen of 47 Medway Street, and a livestock owner, I fear if we allow all the animals to just be as loud as they want 14 minutes out of every hour, out of every day, what is going to stop a resident from coming forward with a petition next year banning certain animals? That is my concern. We need to get back to a neighborly relationship where we foster those relationships with our neighbors so that everybody can be together in peaceful harmony. It doesn't mean that dogs aren't going to bark. It doesn't mean that a bird might crow. But when you have a legitimate problem, it needs to be addressed. And as the town knows, 26 years, I believe I've written 4 nuisance crowing citations. 99% of what I do can be resolved through education and a meeting of the mind between the people when both parties want to work together. I don't take people to court for citations if I don't have a complaining witness willing to go forward. So just keep that in mind. I think that we could be going down a very slippery slope. Changing this regulation, it may come back that it backfires, and we will be highly regulated like every surrounding town. Thank you.
Thank you, Hillary. Anyone else with a question or a comment? Sure.
I just had a question for Hillary. I was wondering if the way it stands now, if the person that does file a complaint with you is identified, if it's disclosed to the other party who they are. I'm wondering if the person that, the person that files the complaint, if that, if that information becomes known to the person who receives the citation, the way it is now.
It would be a public record.
So all of our incidents, sorry, I probably just blasted everybody. All of our reports are done through the police department, and how they release that information has to do with the public records access officer down there. If a citation is written for a monetary violation, if I did not witness it and have a burden of proof of, what happened, the only way that that citation would be issued is if I had a complaining witness willing to come to court to speak on that citation. I'm not going to get into a specific situation, but if you have received a monetary citation, it is because it was either witnessed in front of law enforcement or there is a willing complainant willing to back up their words in a court of law.
Thank you, Hillary.
My only concern is about the vagueness of someone being 5 houses away. 750 feet is more than generous. That's probably 4 houses away from me. People really shouldn't be complaining if they're that far away for something that's during the daytime, and not impacting other people's life. I understand people work at night. I worked at night. Banks were closed at night. I had to adjust my whole life. The world didn't adjust for me. I had to adjust my life with the world when I worked at night. That's a choice we make.
Thank you. Seeing no further comments or questions, this is a general bylaw amendment. It requires a simple majority vote. If you vote in favor, then you are voting to change the bylaws to what's printed in the warrant. All those in favor of changing the bylaws, raise your hand. All those opposed? Let me just do that one more time just to be sure. All those in favor of the article as written? All those opposed? The article does not pass. That is the final article of the evening. May I get a motion to adjourn?
Seconded.
All those in favor? Thank you. Have a good night. Be safe, everybody.